Hey friends, great to be able to share with you a thought for today. And this is actually one of my favorite stories in the Bible. There's a bunch of them are my favorites, to be honest, but this one is particularly poignant. And being a history teacher, I love, a former history teacher. Being a history teacher, I love when you can read something and then put it into its historical context, and that always adds a layer of meaning to the Bible that's truly inspiring. So this is a story, it comes right at the end of where Jesus has delivered the Sermon on the Mount. And this is Matthew 8, verse 1. When he came down, this is Jesus, when he came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. That's going to be key there, that word touched. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." Immediately he was cured of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them." So the history of that's fascinating. So leprosy was considered this absolutely horrendous disease. Anybody with it, people fled from because they were so worried about contracting it. And similar to COVID, could be a deadly disease, and it was also a disease that would lead to a lot of physical deformities of, skin and fingers and toes and arms, like all kinds of horrible stuff. That's why lepers were shunned and placed in leper colonies. So if you ever hear that phrase, leper colony, that's what that's about. So the Old Testament, the Jewish tradition out of which Jesus came, treated it also as just this horrible thing that you were to shun people for. And what people were supposed to do is they were supposed to wear a bell around their neck, and they were supposed to go forward shouting, "Unclean, unclean, unclean." This story takes that story and completely flips it. And we miss it because we don't know the history, but it takes that story of what was supposed to happen, completely flips it. So first off, we don't get any connotation here of the man claiming unclean, unclean, bell around his neck, any of those things. And maybe he wasn't doing those things. Maybe the point of this story is that those things didn't matter. That wasn't how Jesus was judging the man. And the man, the simple statement of faith, like, "Jesus, you can make me clean," was important. Again, like, that's embedded in the Jewish concept that disease, especially leprosy, was considered a sign of uncleanliness. So take the story to the next step. Jesus heals the man. Again, doesn't shun him, heals him. And then there's this beautiful line where it says, as part of that healing, Jesus touched him. That's immense. It's a story about moving beyond this idea of a ritualized purity, a ritualized cleanliness. Like, Jesus was not supposed to touch the man, because if you touched him, and I say this lightly, it was supposed to be like cooties that then you caught it and then you could pass it on to other people as well. And it was also considered sort of a spiritual uncleanliness as well, because at that time, diseases were sort of seen as God's punishment. So if you had somebody who was diseased, it was a sure sign that they also had some spiritual malady that was abhorrent, that we should push aside no matter what. And here's Jesus simply doing this. Touching. That story gets right to, again, what the idea of holiness is, what the idea of healing is. It also draws us out, away from our legalisms, away from our judgments, away, as a pastor, away from clericalism. In other words, my job is like I'm sort of to be set apart in any way, which is just craziness. It's craziness for anybody to feel like they're set apart. Our job is to draw close to those edges, and as best we can, sometimes literally, sometimes only figuratively, at times like this, can we actually touch those places of need and offer healing there? An incredible, beautiful story. So as you go through this week ahead, just think about what that concept of healing is. And so much of that concept of healing is not us holding back, but us leaning forward into the world we're supposed to heal. God always places us in those worlds. You are in the worlds you're supposed to heal right now. You know exactly what they are, and do the best you can. For all of us, need to do the best we can to lean into that in the week ahead. So thank you for joining me this morning, folks. Wishing you all the best in the week ahead. Take care.